Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we'll bring you day 521 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician, lawyer, and blogger Mark Feygin. Special thanks go today to Cinnamon and, of course, to Bill for their relentless support of our channel, and with that, let's dive into day 521. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Saturday, July 29th. Time is 3 minutes past 10 in Kiev and Moscow. About 50,000 are starting with us. About 15,000 of you click the like button. Day 521 with Olexiy. Good evening. How are you doing? We're doing good. Hi. Good evening. So, big ask for all of you who are watching. Since Olexiy decided to present his second eye, please click the link button as well. And the like button and subscribe if you have not done that yet. And of course, that means subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. All of your activities on that front helps us to increase the number of eyeballs on this channel. Alright, let's start. Saturday stream and all, summer. It's good actually that you opened the eye, because there was a lot of comments about that meme with Arestovych and one eye, but I was skeptical. Okay, so we got some new information that Saudi Arabia is going to do peace talks about Ukraine, where representatives of 30 countries were invited, except for Russia. Wall Street Journal is confirming that, and some other media sources. Is it another player who is trying to enter the negotiations team as one of the leading parties? I would say that the full ideation is still not visible, but one can absolutely say that this is a direct consequence of Russia leaving the grain deal. Oh, I agree completely. There are a lot of countries that do depend on grain coming from Ukraine to the African continent, and looking at the list of countries, it tells me that many of them are. So, also non-invitation to Russia, of Russia to that summit, to that negotiation, is also a direct consequence of Russia leaving the grain deal. Okay, and Olexiy, on that little summit, Russia-Africa, I think it's done, I think it's closing. Yeah, it was brief. So there, Ramaphosa, the president of South African Republic, who got his own portion of critique about hustle near invitation of Putin, then non-invitation, then unclear situation with their reception, actually came out and said that it's all good, but we don't really care about your gifts and presents. We don't really care. He said, get back to the grain deal, please. So, all that collection of 17 dictators from 17 out of 55 African countries, despite of everything that's happening around it, I was commenting a lot. It did spoil the picture for Russia. It did spoil the visual for Russia. You know, Mark, everything is very simple here. Grain deal was was not done in one day. It was prepared lengthy. It was a result of compromise, of difficult selection of which vessels, how they're going to be transported, through which commodity exchanges the goods will be sold. There were a lot of interested parties, business organizations, enforcement agencies came together to agree to make it work. And it was working. And there are dozens of different subjects who are eager to protect it and to keep it, from government level to organizational level. And suddenly Putin leaves that, breaking all these agreements. And that deal was done for a reason, right? There were real needs behind it. There was a specter of hunger in dozens of countries if that deal doesn't exist. And here are your prices for grain, which jumped notably just after Russia broke it. So a quarter of countries of the world, one can say, is interested in making sure this deal works. And Putin leaves it, and then he also creates rules in the Black Sea very close to naval piracy, in essence, and starting to hit the grain infrastructure of Ukraine. So even if we revive the deal tomorrow, it's a question now which part of our country, which port will be able to provide services to the world. 32 million tons of grain is a lot, and we have that waiting for a terminal to be able to take it, process it, and the ships to carry it. And then a lot of people have a question. Did Putin think about us when he was leaving it? And they got an answer that no, he didn't. And then their normal decision is, then we will think about Mr. Putin collectively. And then in the country, in his own country, when he is doing his own Africa summit, one of the countries that actually was eager to violate Roman statute if he visited it, actually stands up and says, Vladimir, we need a grain deal. So these countries are also looking for different angles to, I think, press on Putin to make sure that grain deal works. Because this is an eternal fight of sword and shield. He made his move, a strong move, inhumane move. He created the negotiation table by withdrawing from grain deal. Well, now he is going to be faced with another negotiation table. The way these countries will create it for him. And we'll see how much can he trade and negotiate. All right, that's an understandable angle. And in general, your feeling from that so-called African summit in Russia. Do you think, by the way, the results, did anything impress you? In Niger, after the coup, while he was traveling to Russia, there are already Russian flags being brought out by the so-called opposition. So Russian ears are sticking out from that. And that president actually was more pro-France than pro-Russian, so that could have been the reason. And by the way, Niger also has, 90% of uranium mined for French industry. So this is the third strike that Putin aimed at French. Central African Republic, Mali, and Niger. And I'm thinking that France should probably pay back with a number of scalp missiles that is adequate to that offensive done by Putin onto the French interests. So he did resolve a bunch of tasks that he wanted to, because they have similar alignments. A dictator that is in Russia for 23 years is somewhat in alignment with some of the dictators in Africa. They cannot appeal to democratic resources, and they need to concentrate military resources, and they're interested in money and the ways to maintain their position. And Putin is giving them this opportunity, including PMC Wagner, which is protecting their autocratic or even lawless presidency in some countries. So even on that gathering, though, we heard some voices which are, to say the least, are not real friendly to him, demanding him to go back to the grain deal. And we also know that many countries did not send their presidents to that meeting, and they sent ministers of foreign affairs instead. And then things like luring out the officials of Niger and then doing the coup in the country, it actually looks like a joint special operations between the coup people in the country and Russia. And probably next time, leaders of other countries will give it a second thought. Do they even want to go to Russia, to St. Petersburg, to be dethroned in their own location? So it's interesting to see that he got public pushback from those that he thought he could rely on. All right, next topic. We have created a poll. You can vote there. And you probably heard that Prime Minister of Poland made a statement that they're tracking the motion of about 100 Wagner troops and a Suwalki corridor next to it. And they're setting up camp near the border. So there are some motions in this direction. In your opinion, understandably, so far it looks like an information pressure, information operation. Nothing serious is really happening. 100 people, even 5,000 people would not make a difference. But regardless, Putin still continues, despite of all the reaction from Washington and Poland, he is still heating up that situation. And Polish president came out and said that there'll be some engineering detachments created to, I suspect, put landmines or create other barriers for Wagner. So what's your opinion on that? Look, I have a hypothesis. I do not predict anything here. I'm not telling you how it will be, but I'm giving you a hypothesis that I think will fit most events happening. So on the 4th or 5th of September, there starts the West 2023. At the same time, a training exercise, Wall 2023, is starting in Belarus, which is a training exercise for rescue teams in CSTO countries. It's possible that under this banner, they will set up refugee camps for that exercise. Also, by that time, they would have probably created a special group to the western border that will be available. And then probably in 2 months, probably in October, they'll be ready to be used. Maybe second half of October. Provocations themselves may start earlier. But the logic is that with these two training exercises, having already ready and deployed military at the border, every provocation will be amplified times, especially with the country that will have nukes on their territory at that time. Supposedly Russian nukes will still stay there. So this will be the backdrop for the provocations that might be happening. That's why I'm thinking that real information events, I hope they'll be just informational psyop, not leading into anything physical. But real events will be happening sometime in mid-autumn. I would be looking at the result of these trainings. These rescue team trainings look very much like preparing camps for the refugees, which might be used later for all that psyop that Kremlin could use. And it's a curious theory. Thank you, Olexiy. We'll look at that. And by the way, Putin and Lukashenko are making statements, right? People are concerned that they don't believe them, right? They don't believe Putin and Lukashenko. Funny. They need Feygin and Arestovych to come out and talk about that same. So nobody was moving troops, right, when Putin and Lukashenko was moving Wagner to the border with Poland. But when we started talking about that, things stirred. Right, that's a joke. All right, so the poll today, will Putin do a provocation in Suwalki corridor? Yes, about a third. No, about a third. And he'll pee himself before he does it. So that's another third. So for now, it looks like most people are thinking that Putin will pee himself before doing any action there. All right. Wrong answer, actually. Let me make a commentary here, Mark. He is already not peeing. He is already developing some actions on the ground, and informational support to these actions are given by presidents of Russia and Belarus. Well, Lukashenko is not effective, a legit president in Belarus, but at least effectively managing the person managing the country. So both of them coming out and making a series of statements is already a provocation. So it's already a provocation, and the question probably is a bit off, but in essence, this provocation is leading to the fact that Lithuanian and Polish troops are being brought to the border. The process is happening already. The right question would probably be, would these provocations be armed? Will this PSYOP lead to actual hot conflict on the ground? Because as provocations, they already exist. We are already inside a provocation. People, wake up. Nobody peed himself. The question is, will they pee themselves on the next phase of actual armed conflict? Actual fire on the border. People are voting. We already have 124,000 with us. 46,000 click the like button. And we are asking you to please continue sharing links to that stream. It's summer and YouTube is also cranky, so a lot depends on you if you do click that like button. Before we go further to look at the map, there is a lot to talk about there. There is another hot topic that is related to sports. There is the second day of a scandal, fencing scandal. Ukrainian fencer Harlan, who refused to shake hand at the World Championship, which some people claim that was a rule of the contest. And she refused to shake hand of a Russian fencer who was performing under the Olympic Committee flag. Russians were not performing under the flag of Russia. And I was reading an interesting post with Alexander Morozov before you comment on this. So this post says that it's good that Andrei Kobякov, journalist, is working in Deutsche Welle, who was reviewing the situation, and he explained in his social media that Harlan did not just offer a saber in direction of the opponent, but it actually is a norm, one of the versions of the norm that it was active during COVID times. So Ukrainian fencer offered an alternative gesture, which, by the way, she also checked upon with the director of the competition and the federation. And Russian fencer, instead of accepting the gesture and tapping her sword on the opponent's sword, created the scene, got the chair, and was sitting on that arena for about 15 minutes, understanding that this handshake is probably not possible even politically. And right now, everything is okay. Here, sorry, I lost the quote. The decision about disqualification of Harlan was reversed, and he has a very good shared a very good support of the international group, and they reversed that decision that was initially suggested. And Russian Olympic provocation team had eaten more shit again. So this scandal is a good example that do not to those sportsmen that are fighting for Russian Federation, do not hold onto that international Olympic game flag, but rather transfer to other alternative flags, different countries, and participate in Olympic Games for those countries. And initial actions of Smirnova were actually offensive to the federation and to the sport when she created a whole scandal out of nothing. So that guy, he not only is a journalist, he also is a specialist in things fencing, and he dug deeper. So this sword tapping is actually an equivalent of shaking hands in the sport. What do you think about it? I think here one of the key moments is her 15-minute seating on the fencing podium, because if she was, just upset, would turn around, maybe stayed there for 5 minutes and turned around and left, that would be one thing. But sitting there for 15 minutes, 5-0, that reminds me of an old Soviet anecdote when the leader of the delegation that goes to Paris is telling the delegation, guys, there are different provocations possible. You should not fall for them because it will otherwise prevent us from deploying our own provocations. So everything is very exact and sharp, just like we could expect. Soviet sport, Russian sport also, has always been politicized to the brim. They always had consultants dressed in civilian suits with FSB rank, and they probably explained to the sportsmen how to behave and what to do. And, In sports, that's normal, especially in fencing. Different sportsmen would be military. They're representatives of military of their own countries. Yep, and for me, it looks very much like a provocation, which was either prepared in advance or was concocted on the spot when they were calculating different scenarios. And our sports lady came out on top in the most comfortable and acceptable way. And the overall decision by the World Sports Society and letting her participate in future events of the Federation shows that everybody understood well what was happening. And you can see on that famous picture that is being peddled around the web that she actually offers her sword, her saber, to tap for the opponent. So the ethical question was there. It was a pretty thin question. Can rules force sportsmen to extend personal gestures? Because shaking a hand is a personal gesture. It's a personal decision for each sportsman. Can rules actually force sportsmen to shake hands? And this was the deeper discussion about sports ethics. But the thing is, she didn't refuse from that. She followed the rules, just a different protocol. She offered an alternative variant to that. And they were just fencing, they could tap the swords again. But no, Russian representative decided to make a scandal out of it. And if she wanted to make a decision during those 50 minutes, she could have, but what she was sitting there and waiting for disqualification of her opponent. And that's low level, really. She just lost in the contest, in the actual fight, and now she is using the alternative methods to disqualify your opponent and to win. Yeah, it was given. By the way, it's a saber fencing. It's not rapier, and it's different things in this sport. I was privy a little bit to that, so I kind of know basics that these are very different things. They have different way of registering their taps and hits, but that's for specialists to comment. But some people were discussing that the fact that she had her sword lower down in that posture, she did not let Russian contestant to shake her hands, and some people were saying that she was stopping another sportsman from sports girl to coming closer to her and shaking hand. She was just showing her, do not come. In reality, it was an alternative handshake gesture. And then another question that I have is, it's just not sport behavior, not sport-like behavior. You just lost the match, and you're creating a scene. And by the way, specialists in that sport also took a look at that picture and said that no, this is not a gesture precluding her from approach. It's a lowered saber. She could have at least came 2 more steps closer, and she could tap it from where she was. So all these initial screaming reactions on the Russian propaganda side, how dare she, they were a bit shallow. They did not dig deeper and did not understand, did not know the sport. I think personally, again, in any sport, you cannot enforce the fact that you cannot enforce the handshake. You can tap your tennis rackets or you can tap your swords, but shaking hand is a personal gesture. It should not be required. Also, 50,000 are watching us, and let's get to the map. Mark, before the map, one more thing. So what do we start with? We have Arestovych traveling, so he doesn't see our map. Let's start with that, Mark, that today is a day of special operations of Ukraine. Special forces, special operation forces. It is their professional holiday. These are men and women who can be characterized with one thing. If infantry detachments are grinding through enemy with heavy means, artillery and tanks in support of them, and paratroopers are also hitting them, the special operations forces are hunting them like hunters. These are people with a very specific mindset. It is natural for them to fight being surrounded on all 360. in all directions. So usual troops are usually afraid to be in that situation. These guys, they work only, that's their normal work, to be deep inside the enemy territory, to be surrounded on all sides. And one needs to be of a very special mindset to walk across the minefields, to get into the depth of the enemy territory, to reach objectives. And we take the hats off to them. While we're talking now, somebody is walking across the front line to hunt. And they are the ones destroying logistics of our enemy, destruction of warehouses. They're not just hunting down the personnel. They already are. They have elevated themselves, Ukrainian forces of special operations. They are doing operative level operations on the whole direction, like Zaporozhye direction. Today, by the way, automobile and railroad bridge in Changar was seriously damaged. And that's already a level, because the forces of special operations, they're doing operations. They're not just hunting individuals, they're not just disturbing the enemy, they're doing special operations. And it was a big discussion here internally in Ukraine, when will we achieve that level? And they have achieved it. Because it's a mix, it's a very high ask. It took them a while to get to that point, but they're now doing this very serious operative level events. And it's a mix of special service and military service. So thank you for your work. All right, I don't see the map. Let's start with whatever you're showing. Okay, let's start with Kremenaya, up north. Their enemy continued their active actions, according to official statements by Hanna Mahler, who had a birthday, by the way, yesterday. That small, frail woman actually is pulling the whole Ministry of Defense representation in the biggest war since the Second World War in Europe, in a very difficult condition, when information war is a higher contour of all the struggle, and to a degree that information frame defines everything that's happening below. I know her pretty well. I congratulated her yesterday, but I want to congratulate her again today because she deserves it. She is a high-level professional and international expert. She is a lawyer. Not too many people know, but she was the one who posed several serious questions, which in Ukraine developed the whole meaning of legality of war and legal aspect of war. She also had a very deep training on the informational warfare in the West, and she is a great specialist in her field. So she is a very strong representative, and happy birthday. So she made a statement that our foes are continuing active actions on Kupinsk-Kremenaya span of the front, and the enemy had slowed down their motion because that promoted 4-kilometer march that happened during one day. They are barely moving now, but the fight is still difficult and heavy, despite they're trying to regroup and try to change the direction of their strikes. They have advantage in manpower and advantage in artillery. And those who are continuing saying, hey, Ukraine has 1.3 million people in the military, but they somehow managed to create an advantage on this part of the front. I can explain that we have to deploy our troops along the 5/6 of our border. I think it's border with our border with Russia is about 2,000 kilometers. Our border with Belarus is another big chunk. So the only part that we don't have to protect is probably just Poland corridor and our western neighbors. But naval border, Belarus and Russia, this is a huge span of our border that we need to keep our troops all along. And this goes against the main principles of military operations, of concentration your forces. That's why our enemies sometimes can create local advantage in both artillery and manpower. And in artillery, by the way, they have advantage on any part of the front. They have a lot more artillery alongside the whole front. We have much fewer artillery systems than they do. And tanks too. So, and if, to answer the question, why do we not bring more troops to the north to counter their advantage? The answer is simple. If we do that, we will bear our offensive in the south. They actually initiated that action on the front in the north to try to lure us out from the south. Because this is a serious group that they aggregated in that part of the front. It's actually bigger than Soviet Union had in Afghanistan. And one need to be real thankful to our troops who are holding the line there and who are fighting in the ravines and the hills in that part of the front. Because our current situation there is, one, our artillery battery is facing 13 Russian artillery batteries. And this is the conditions in which they're making these wonders. So our troops finished and paused and slowed their offensive maneuver in this part, even under these conditions. So this offensive operation is going only in Kremenaya or also above it and other parts? No. It's already stopped. So it's not really ongoing. We brought more reserves and we slowed them down. They're now at a stalemate there. They're doing active offensive maneuvers, but this is not actually resulting in any motion. And maybe in some parts they captured 300 yards, but then they were kicked back because we're also going into counteroffensive actions. And this is just the first phase. They have enough troops aggregated to do the second phase. It will be difficult there. It will be difficult there for a long time, but I don't think they will achieve significant results on that part of the front. Just summarily looking at what they have achieved and where they're going, I think they will fail. But if we go south, in the north of Bakhmut, there were fights without significant changing of the front line, but to the south of it, we actually have liberated a territory there, and you can see the line following Klishevka, Andreevka, Kurdyumovka. That's where that is happening. Then Avdiivka and Marinka without changes. And then in the south, in the last 2 days, we have a lot of reports near Staromayorskaya, see the blue protrusion, and Priyutne, where we are liberating more territories. We avoided Rabotina also, and we got some of the heights where they were positioned. We captured some of them, but the others we just went around. And they also have a very difficult problem near Priyutne. Deep State shows that it's still in the red zone, but their evil tongues are saying that our troops are already there. Where do we see Priyutne? Can you show us? It's near Staromayorska. It's next to it. See that second protrusion? The one in the middle of the screen? Yeah, that's Priyutne. So we can say that at least in one area we have crossed all the preliminary entrenchments, and now we have reached the main line, the main defense line of Russia. And this is Lyubimovka, Orlenskaya. These are where the main anti-tank teeth and other concrete engineering solutions that they're trying to build to stop us. And they have spent a lot of reserves already. So this line exists. It's a fortification, but you also need some troops to be there to defend it. So it's curious to see if they will have enough troops to bring to that line to defend it. They have a 35th army there near Takmak. So that may be a card they can play, but we also know what to do with these guys. So in the south, the operation is going to the second stage. We have crossed 15 to 30 kilometer line before the main defense line. That's where our enemy suffered most of their losses. And now it's the second phase, the fight for actual fortification line. In some parts they have a third row, they have a third line of defense, but in some places they don't. And that is why they're keeping that 35th Army to try to counter if we break through. Yeah, so there are some parts where there is Staromayorka, Staromlinovka, there is no third line there, right? There is just a second. Right, there is that. There is also Mariupol direction, where they also keep a little bit of troops trying to address our breakthroughs. They have troops in the depth that are supposed to do counter attacks on our troops that may break through. But this is a very difficult maneuver, especially on the operative areas, which are steps in that part of our country. So it'll be difficult. One can wish good luck to the command of Ukraine because I think we can solve it. And I don't expect Russian command to be capable to solve these difficult tasks. So one can be somewhat somberly optimistic, cautiously optimistic, but I think we resolved the task of the first phase. We solved it, in 2 months, right? Roughly. Started on the 4th of June, about 2 months with that scale. So give us another month. We'll probably go through the main fortification line, and after that, we'll reach the goals maybe by October. We will have our troops at the seashores of Azov Sea, and that's a whole other story and page of this war. Okay, well, let's hope for that. And in other parts, and that shelling of Taganrog that hit the media, well, yeah, people are saying something hit Taganrog. That could only be a missile. See that red diamond that far deep from the front line? It could have been a missile, right? Yeah, I think so. Probably. And in the direction of Antonov Bridge and Kherson, their evil tongues are saying that Ukrainians are doing a lot of activity, making a lot of activity along the river, and it's difficult to hold it, and they're screaming it's bloody murder. And you can see their line of defense is much weaker here. Yeah, it is, but it's not so easy to cross the river through that system of islands. It's a difficult operation. But infantry and special operations can do a lot of things, and they're still failing to liquidate that little perch that we got near Antonov Bridge, and that area might expand because it's being held for something, right? So there probably will be more troops moving across. We'll see. Okay. 162,000 are watching us. 64,000 click the like button. What about the poll? Let's take a look. Will Kremlin follow with the provocation in the Suwalki corridor? 46,000 voted. Yes, 37%. No, 28%. They'll pee themselves, 35%. According to Arestovych, Putin is not peeing, but 35% are thinking he will be scared. Yeah, I think we're meaning the armed provocation here, not just information provocation. Okay, so let's discuss the results of Shoigu visit to North Korea, because Secretary of State Blinken made a statement that he thinks Shoigu visited North Korea to ask for weapons. And Shoigu needed to show that he actually could do active actions, trying to clean his name from what Prigozhin called him during his mutiny. So he's trying to be big and to play big. By the way, visually, he's not too different from the North Koreans that he was visiting, right? Sometimes one wants to agree with Prigozhin's descriptions of Shoigu. Do you think North Korean arms may go to Russia? You said that China might make a decision about it. I wouldn't say it's only China. They have a huge influence on this, but I don't know if China is interested in this. The fact that Koreans will start delivering notable support of ammo and arms, I don't know. I don't know if they will do that. But they'll be probably delivering the dual-purpose goods. And Chinese, by the way, are doing that too, as some international organizations are confirming. But will they start delivering their own ammo? Will they cross that border and start delivering their own artillery ammo? I doubt it. There are some concerns. Although, if a general logic is as follows, that Russia is going for escalation to de-escalate it on negotiations, then the threat of bringing large-scale supplies from the east needs to be present in the area. Something in the style of, if you're so bad and don't want to discuss it with us, and do not want to give us Donetsk, Zaporozhye, Kherson, and Lugansk regions, we will bring a lot of scary arms from China, or at least maybe North Korea, and will continue our offensive. But Americans have a very good response to that. Okay, then we can give Ukrainians not 50 F-16s, but 150 F-16s. If you want the weapons race, we can. So Americans have a good position here when they need to enforce peace with Russians. They can say, you can conscribe the whole country and the whole Korean army will just supply a ton of weapons. And when they want to keep us on leash, they basically can say that we'll supply less arms to you guys, less arms to Ukraine. So Russia doesn't have that support from the East yet. We have some from the West, not as much as we wanted to, but yeah, they can regulate these negotiations with these means. So we'll see. Okay. Apparently, there is more information coming from Russia-Africa summit. They probably want us to die from laughter. Putin is doing a special meeting with the African leaders on Ukraine. And he made a statement that Russia is not breaking any clauses of the United Nations and is acting with full agreement with the United Nations statutes, and that United Nations laws should be respected by other countries. There shouldn't be one-sided sanctions. There shouldn't be attempts to provide security for one country at the expense of the others. And apparently, according to Putin, one can just bring troops to another country and say and do whatever you want. They always appeal to the international rule and try to twist it in the way that it somewhat leaves them a leeway, even though they're really breaking every law they can find. Yeah, I think they're aggregating votes. The whole goal of playing with Africa is getting more votes for United Nations and international votes. That's the topic they usually do. And okay, let them try. We will have Britain, France, and the United States voting for us, and they will have Uganda, Zimbabwe, and somebody else voting for them. In United Nations, one country is one vote, so one can respect the opinion of people who are in power for 40 years in these countries and want to stay longer with the help of Putin. Oh yeah, there is some synergy there. 43 minutes. We've been live. Let's look at the results of the voting. Will Kremlin follow with the provocation and Suwalki corridor? Yes, 37%. No, 28%. They will pee themselves, 35%. So we would say that if we take the humorous part out, then the provocation is possible. We'll see. Yeah. Okay, so let's conclude that. And one more announcement. This one is about the marathon that is done for Belarus political prisoners. Different media channels, about 20 or 30 Belarus-related YouTube channels, media are doing that. I think Belsat is the organizer or the platform for it. So those who can come join that marathon, look it up on YouTube, and you can find ways there to support Belarus political inmates. This is an important detail. I will post more info in my Telegram channel, and you can go from there. Attention to these inmates as prisoners is lower on the background of the war, but they're in horrible conditions by Lukashenko regime, so there is that media marathon going to support them. We have 165,000 watching on my channel, got about 60,000 likes, so we'll probably break till Monday, till 10 p.m. on Monday. Long live Belarus, right? Best wishes to Belarus, and of course subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English language and have not done that yet. Side note from Privateer Station, Monday stream may come with a bit of delay, but we'll catch up later during the week. By the way, yeah, original stream will be on Monday at 23 at 11 p.m. So he'll be traveling. Okay, maybe there'll be more news. All right, Monday's live stream will be at 11 p.m. Okay, see you guys.